These are what we stay alive for.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to be filming a really exciting video. I've been meaning to film this video for years now, but basically I'm going to talk about how to read more, how to fall in love with reading, general tips on how to make time for reading, all of that, and I'm really excited. You may be surprised to know that I wasn't always a reader. I actually thought I hated reading growing up, so I'm going to talk about my reading journey, how I fell in love with reading. Like I said, I'll be giving lots of tips for how to read more, and yes, so let's get into it. So I never really read when I was younger. I was always like fascinated by books and I wanted to read, but I guess I just didn't know how to find books that I would enjoy. I wanted to show this book that I have. This is The Snow Gum Fairies. It literally says good book on it. And I wrote my name and everything. I used to bring this around with me everywhere, but I never actually read it. So I wanted to share this story because I feel like it shows that I've always been fascinated by books and I've always wanted to be a reader sort of thing. Honestly, maybe I should read this sometime soon because yeah, I've actually never read it, but I love that book. It means a lot to me. And I used to participate in those like summer holiday school reading challenges where you wrote down books that you read over the summer and you'd like give in the piece of paper, and I would literally just lie. I would just find books at the library and write the titles down and just be like, yeah, I read all these, but I didn't. And I would even go to the library and I would check out books. Like I remember I would check out like Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen books. I would literally just be in my room flicking through every page, but I wouldn't actually read it, and then I'd finish it and I'd be like, okay mom, let's go to the library, I need to get some more books. Like, so interesting. Anyway, then we get to high school and of course we had to read books for English and most of them were classics, and I liked some of these books but I definitely didn't love any of them, and I also think that the writing style was just not fitting for who I was at that moment because I was craving more accessible contemporary writing style and I wanted more like contemporary stories. Anyway, then of course more books started to get popular in the YA space and The Fault in Our Stars became really popular and I decided to read it and I fell in love and I was like, wow. Finally, I get to read about a modern teenager. I fell in love with John Green's writing style. I loved the characters, I loved the quotes. I was annotating, like highlighting my favorite moments. Like I loved that book. But I didn't know how to find like more recommendations for books that were similar. Like I would go to the bookstore and there'd be like a tiny teenage fiction shelf. I don't even know if they actually called it teenage fiction. I remember the YA section was so small in the bookstores. And I think I actually remember seeing like the teenage section for the first time. I was like, exactly. So I would go to the bookstore and I would see like, you know, what's popular on the shelf, and I would pick up a few titles but none of them were like amazing to me. And I did read a few other books like Divergent. I liked it, wasn't obsessed, and you know, like the classic YA dystopian books. But yeah, I think I kind of just gave up because I was like, okay, nothing can beat The Fault in Our Stars. And I actually remember watching Elle Fowler's literature videos. I was so obsessed with those because I was like, wow, people like make videos talking about books. That's really cool. So I got some recommendations from her, but once again I think she was mainly talking about like YA dystopian, which was never something that I was obsessed with. Anyway, so I would read like a few books a year. Then I finally decided to see if I could find on YouTube a video of someone talking about this specific book that I'd read, and I wanted them to talk about all their spoiler-filled thoughts. And then I found Paul and Bananas Books, aka Christine, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. Like she was so passionate about the books that she was talking about. So of course I watched her videos and I got so many recommendations, and I was learning about new books that I'd never heard of before, and they all sounded amazing, and I was suddenly like, wow, like honestly my world changed. And reading was like all I wanted to do. I started to find other booktubers as well, and it was just this whole new world. Finding these people on YouTube who were so passionate about reading made me feel like I'd finally found my people and I was finally in a really safe and welcoming community. Like honestly, I can't explain the magic I felt when I first discovered BookTube. So I started to read like 100 books a year. I was so obsessed. I fell in love with so many stories and characters, but I had no one to talk about them with. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna start my own channel to talk about the books. And obviously years later, here we are. I love reading for so many different reasons. I'll probably forget some because there are just so many, but some of the reasons I love reading. Books are always there for me. I found my love for reading during a time where I felt very misunderstood. I was really struggling with my mental health. I felt really lonely and pretty lost. So finding these stories and characters that I could relate to finally made me feel seen and worthy. I felt validated in how I was feeling and I felt less alone. There's such comfort in knowing that there's someone out there who has a shared experience or thinks similarly to how you think. It definitely helps me feel more connected to the world, and this was before there were more diverse stories and characters in film. So this was kind of the only way that I was able to consume stories about like non-white people. I remember when I first read To All the Boys I Loved Before, I was like, oh my goodness. The main character, Lara Jean, is biracial, Korean and white like me, and I've never in my life experienced, you know, seeing a character who was similar to me racially, and I was just like, I can't even explain that feeling. Like, it was so amazing to finally see myself in a main character. It's also comforting to know that the books that I love are always there. There is so much that changes in life. People come and go, but books never change, and they're always there for you if you want to revisit them. When I'm feeling down or lonely, sometimes words are the only thing that helps soothe those feelings. For example, Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too. This is my favorite graphic novel. This is one that I go to all the time when I'm feeling lost or down or lonely, because it just provides such comfort, and it's always here to remind me that those feelings actually have a lot of value. So for example, let me read one of my favorite passages. There are many reasons to be sad. You may be sad because you feel alone. The comforting thing about feeling lonely is that everything that has ever existed also knows what loneliness feels like too. You may be sad because you are sad. It is okay to be sad. But if you are sad because happiness is fleeting, just remember that sadness is also fleeting too. When you are sad, it is okay to let yourself be sad. That is okay. Books nourish my mind. I am an endlessly curious person. I always have a million questions about life and why people are the way that they are. And the more stories I read, the more insight I gain into the mystery of life and the world. And reading about characters I relate to also helps me to understand myself better, which I'm always trying to do. And I can also read about characters who inspire me to be a better version of myself. Books can also give me a lot of insight into what I want in life. So, you know, I can read about a character living a life that I would love to live. Some characters can even inspire me to pick up new hobbies. I also love romance books for teaching me to never settle, and it helps me better understand what it is I want in a romantic relationship. Romance books have so much value. Like, honestly, I love them. I just wanted to give that little shout out to romance books because a lot of people think they're just like silly little stupid books. I got my own. Books help me to be more empathetic. I feel like this is obvious, but reading about characters from different backgrounds and who live different lives than I do helps me to gain more empathy and be a more understanding person. Forming beautiful connections. This is definitely one of my favorite reasons I love reading. I've met most of my best friends and favorite people in the world through my love of reading, and these are people I honestly can't imagine living without. I have so many beautiful friendships that I'm so grateful for, and I've met them through our shared love of literature. Like, isn't that just stunning? I actually think about it all the time. Like, I'm just like, wow. If I never started talking about books on YouTube, like, you wouldn't even be in my life right now, probably. And it's scary. But obviously I'm so thankful. And of course I have this amazing community here that was started because of my love for reading. So even if you're here and you don't really read or you don't like reading, this all started because of my love for reading, and I'm so grateful for this community. And honestly, it's a constant reminder that there are beautiful people in the world, and I'm just so thankful. When I meet someone and they tell me that they love reading, I always have this feeling, I'm like, okay, there's a high chance you're going to be a stunning person. Because usually you gain more empathy through reading, and a lot of the time the people that I meet who love reading have similar values to me. If you read, you're most likely cool. Silly, goofy, fun. Obviously, there is the reason that I love reading for pure entertainment. There's nothing like the feeling of reading a really fun book, discussing theories with others who have read the book, being part of a fandom, reading fanfic based on characters you already love, etc. It's just so fun. Books provide escapism. When life feels overwhelming, I know that I can escape into a comforting story. This is usually the times where I reread a favorite book that I know will provide me with a safe space that I'm already familiar with, and I can feel happy, cozy, comforted, safe, all of that. Books allow you to use your imagination. A classic thing that non-readers say to me is, oh, I'd rather just watch the movie, or I'd rather just watch a TV show. Obviously, I love studying movies, I love TV shows, but reading a book is an entirely different experience that can't be replicated by watching a movie or watching a TV show. One thing I always like to say is with film, there are so many different elements that go into it. So obviously we have the script, we have the acting, we have the cinematography, we have the score, we have the costuming. And if one of those elements is off, it can affect your enjoyment of the story, or it can affect, you know, just the story in general. But with reading, there aren't as many elements. So for example, like if you had a story that you loved, but the main character was an actor that you really didn't like, it ruins the whole thing. But you don't have that issue with books, and it allows you to use your imagination. Yeah, it's just an entirely different experience. I asked on my Instagram story why you love reading, and I wanted to share some of the responses. Books have always been an escape from the most traumatizing moments in my life. I can learn so much about myself and others and see a glimpse of the author's mind and heart. The joys and sorrows that other people face, I can feel at home and on an adventure. Community, escaping and learning new things. It gives me an escape while expanding my perspective on reality. I love being immersed in a story/new world just by the power of words. A way to escape life of physical pain from health conditions and depression. It's like a best friend that understands you but also helps you escape. Honestly, so many stunning responses. I love reading through these. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how to read more and how to make time for reading. Reading multiple books at once and reading books in different formats. Now, obviously, this doesn't work for everyone. I know some people have to have like one book that they're reading at a time, but it's definitely something that I encourage if you can, because especially if you're a mood reader, you have lots to choose from. If you sit down to read and you're like, okay, what should I read? You have lots of different vibes you can choose from on your currently reading list. Now, I will say to do this, it's better to have books in different genres, because if you're just reading like 5 fantasy books at once, you could get mixed up with the worlds and stuff like that. I wanted to show the books that I'm currently reading. So I have some physical books, some ebooks, a book on my Kindle, an audiobook. So for physical books, I'm currently reading Cleopatra and Frankenstein, which is contemporary fiction. I'm also reading The Essential Rumi, which is a collection of Rumi poetry. I'm reading this non-fiction book, Boundaries, which is all about how to set healthy boundaries in the relationships in your life. I'm also reading Devotions, which is another poetry collection. On my Kindle, I'm reading Love and Other Words. I've only read like 5% though, so but this is definitely good if I'm on the go. On my iPad, I'm currently reading some fanfic. I'm reading Marked by Olivia Blake. And on my phone, I'm listening to an audiobook, Word Slut, which is a feminist guide to taking back the English language, and it's another non-fiction. So yeah, I like having, you know, lots of different options, and it's good to have an audiobook for when I'm, you know, driving and stuff, physical book for when I want to read physically, because I'm always in different moods, you know. And before we move on, I'm sure you're thinking, wow, those cases. I know, right? And these are from Casetify, who are the sponsor of today's video. So let's talk about them, and I also need to show you the stunning new cases that I got from them. Casetify cases are my absolute favorite because they give your device protection as well as making them look stunning. And honestly, when I'm wearing a Casetify case, I can relax knowing my device is safe.
It's a bit much.
Obviously, the iPhone 14 is coming out soon, and their new iPhone 14 cases include their latest protection technology, EcoShock. This has over 20% increased protection while still maintaining a slim design, which means you can still look stunning and have your phone easily fit in your pocket and your bag and everything. With EcoShock, there's now an increased drop height. Now you have protection at up to 11.5 feet. That is honestly incredible. Their cases are actually 5 times the military standard. So this means that the cases have been drop tested 130 times to make sure that the EcoShock doesn't wear off. So Casetify have lots of curated prints. So these are the 2 most recent ones I got. I absolutely love these designs and colors. And they also have lots of customizable cases. So I recently got this one, which says darling, because I just love that word. And the case I'm currently wearing is this one, which is a mirror design, and it says close both eyes because it's a reference to close both eyes to see with the other eye, Rumi quote. And I love the mirror cases. They're so fun and reflective and also functional when you're out and about. Casetify also have obviously iPad cases and lots of fun accessories, so you can get a fun little strap moment. I also have one of their camera lens protectors on. I also really love Casetify because they are very big on sustainability. For example, their new iPhone 14 cases are made from 65% recycled and plant-based materials. They are also partially made from upcycled phone cases as part of their Casetify program, which gives new life to post-consumer waste. So yeah, Casetify's new iPhone 14 Impact series is now available at casetify.com, and you can go to casetify.com/bookswithchloe to get 15% off your order. Thank you so much to Casetify for sponsoring this video. Make reading a social activity / join a book club. I love how reading is something that you can do by yourself or something that you can do with others. And some of my most happy memories are those I've spent buddy reading a book with friends. Buddy reading is such a fun way to consume a story and also connect with others. It also motivates you to finish the book when you're reading with someone else. So obviously there are lots of different ways to buddy read. You can decide which book you're going to read. You can discuss while you're reading the book. You can finish the book separately and then come together and discuss it. If you watch my vlogs, you know I buddy read all the time with Kevin and Caitlin on FaceTime. So basically one of my favorite things to do is buddy read a book with them on FaceTime, and basically we get to see each other's like live reactions. We can have moments to pause and discuss. You know, we can keep each other motivated to keep reading. It's honestly one of my favorite things in this life. And honestly, it would be more ideal if we could do it in person, but obviously we live in different countries, so we can't do that all the time. But in real life, reading dates, wow, one of my favorite things. I love like going to a park, setting up a picnic blanket, you know, having a little picnic and reading in the sun with someone else. If you don't have anyone to read with, you can try to find an in real life book club locally, or you can try to join online book clubs. For example, I have my Patreon book club, so every month we buddy read a book together. We discuss it in our Discord, and I also film a spoiler-filled reading vlog for it. So that is so fun every month doing that with everyone. And I love hearing everyone's different perspectives. Once again, it obviously keeps you motivated to actually finish the book. I also do live reading on Twitch. So basically what we do is obviously we chat at the beginning. We all talk about the books that we're going to read, and then I usually do like reading sprints with this hourglass. So this is actually 30 minutes, but yeah, it's really cute. And obviously we just read until the hourglass runs out, and then we have a little break, talk about our thoughts on the book that we're reading, and it's really fun. And once again, it's a good way to stay motivated. It's nice to have some company. Of course, all of you are welcome to join. It's honestly such a stunning community. So thankful for that space. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite ways to read. Follow a diverse range of people who talk about books. This is my favorite way to get book recommendations. Obviously, I recommend following people who have similar taste to you, but I also think you should follow people who maybe don't. I love following people who have different reading tastes to me, but are really excited about the books that they're reading and are really passionate about literature, because it gets me excited. I think it's also important to follow a wide range of people so you can expand your reading horizons and be exposed to all the different types of books out there. It's definitely good to get out of your comfort zone, which I will talk about more soon. But yeah, just make sure you're not limited in the books that you're reading. A lot of the books that get really popular may not always be the best, and most of the time they're written by white authors, but there are so many more beautiful underrated stories written by authors of color and other authors from marginalized groups, and it's harder for these authors to get publishing opportunities and for the book to blow up, etc. So yeah, just make sure you're following a wide range of people. That's what I definitely recommend. I will try to leave some of my favorites in the description, and I would also love to hear your favorite people to watch for book recommendations. Branch out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to read a book from a genre that you don't usually read from. You may be surprised and find a new favorite book. Also, try not to feel like you need to read all the popular books. I feel like I definitely felt this when I first joined BookTube. I was like, oh my god, I need to read all the popular books. I don't know why I felt that, but I know that a lot of people feel that. So I'm here to tell you, try to get over that feeling, because what is that? Obviously, just read the books that you want to read and try not to box yourself in. So for example, for ages, my favorite genre was fantasy, and the majority of the books that I read were YA fantasy. And I definitely had a good time, but I started to feel burnt out. I felt like I was reading the same thing over and over again, and I wasn't as excited for reading. And I actually reached a point where I was kind of like, oh my god, do I not like reading anymore? I was kind of freaking out. But then I expanded my reading and I read books from different genres. I started to read more adult fiction, and my love for reading was reignited. So it's definitely important to embrace change and different phases and moods in your reading. I think it's also important to branch out of your comfort zone and try different genres to get to know your reading taste better. Embrace reading slumps. Obviously, don't force reading. Only read if you want to. It's natural to go through phases with hobbies, and maybe, you know, you have a phase where you're not really in the reading mood, and that is fine. Let it be. But if you are in one of those reading slumps where you do want to read, but for some reason you just can't get yourself to, I definitely recommend doing things that get you excited about reading. So the tips that I'm talking about currently apply, like watching people talk about books and get excited about books, plan a buddy read, reread a favorite book, etc. Try not to put pressure on your reading. When you follow a lot of people who read a lot, it's easy to compare and start thinking like, why do I not read as much as them? Or how do they read so fast? And I know it's easier said than done, but try not to compare. Everyone has different schedules, everyone has different reading speeds, and as long as you're enjoying your reading, that's obviously all that matters. Don't try to read as fast as you can so you can read heaps of books. Obviously, quality over quantity, and really allow yourself to enjoy all the words that you're soaking up. Have a favorites shelf. So if you own books physically, I recommend maybe starting a favorites shelf. So this is mine right here. And honestly, even just looking at them gets me excited to read, because obviously so many stories I love are like all in one place, and I'm like, exactly, you know. It's also nice because I can pick up a favorite book, go to one of my favorite quotes or moments, and get excited. If God wanted me to give you up, he wouldn't have made me. If you get books out from the library, or you mainly read ebooks, or you listen to audiobooks, you can also consider maybe just like having a folder on your phone with like favorite quotes and stuff, and get excited about reading it that way. Incorporate reading into your everyday routine and make it a habit. Honestly, I recommend having a book on you at all times, whether that be like an ebook on your phone, a book in your bag. When I'm out, I usually have my Kindle, have an audiobook ready. Yeah, I always have a book on me. So if I'm driving, I'm listening to an audiobook a lot of the time. If I'm on the train, usually I'll be reading a physical book or my Kindle. If I go to an appointment and I'm waiting for the doctor for like 10 minutes, I use that 10 minutes to usually read. Obviously, these small increments of time add up, and I always like to make the most of those moments to read. So if reading isn't already a part of your routine, definitely try to incorporate it slowly. So you can try to read for like 10 minutes before you go to bed each night. You can set a timer so you're not distracted, put your phone in do not disturb. And reading before bed has a lot of benefits, obviously, and you actually retain the most information before you sleep. annotate your books. I already have a video on how I annotate my books, but it's definitely quite outdated now. My method for annotating is quite different now, so I will be filming an updated one soon. But basically, I like to write down my thoughts as I read. I like to highlight my favorite quotes, underline and circle words that I love, etc. And this means that I'm more active in consuming the words that I read, and I'm closer to the text, and I just feel like it enhances the reading experience. It also gets me excited to reread past books that I've annotated because I'm excited to see how my thoughts have changed. Have a reading journal. So this is my reading journal. I have a journaling channel if you didn't know, so I talk about it all on there. But basically, this is how I was tracking, you know, the books that I read. I would give them the star rating, and it was definitely fun to know that when I finished a book, I could update my reading journal and put in the little book cover and everything, and, you know, cross books off my TBR. But I've actually switched to a digital reading journal, so I'm going to be doing an updated video on my journaling channel about that. But yeah, physical reading journal, digital reading journal, or even just like writing down the books that you read in your phone, or obviously updating your Goodreads. It's just really satisfying once you finish your book to have a place to update and be like, yep, I finished that book, here's my rating. Like, it's just a satisfying moment. Set reading goals. Now, this definitely doesn't work for everyone, and I'm honestly pretty chill about reading goals. I like to set goals at the beginning of the year. So for example, like, I'm gonna read 80 books this year, or like I want to read 80 books this year. I want to read more non-fiction, etc. But if I don't reach those goals, like, it's fine. So I definitely am chill about it, and I think that's the way to go because you don't want to stress about your reading. So yeah, it's just a fun little thing, and it can definitely be motivating. Don't be afraid to DNF the books that you're reading. Life is too short to read books that you don't want to read. And I know, you know, if you're a completionist, it's hard to start reading a book, realize you're not really vibing it, and decide to not finish it. But really try, because life is so much better when you DNF. I usually give a book like 50 to 100 pages, and then if I'm really not vibing it, I'm like, you know what, no, I'm not gonna read this. Or I will decide to put it on hold and read it at a different time in my life, because honestly, timing is so important, and reading a certain book at the perfect time in your life can definitely determine your enjoyment of that book. So there have been times where I start reading a book where I'm like, oh, I'm not really vibing this at this time, so I decide to put it on hold, and then I read it later on and it becomes like a new favorite, you know? Yeah, just don't be afraid to DNF a book or put it on hold. Life is too short. My last tip is make reading a moment. So when I get myself set up for reading, I definitely like to make it a moment. I like to set up candles, get an ASMR room going of, like, you know, maybe even like a library, get the vibes going, get your tea ready, get your snacks, and really get cozy and create a nice environment if you can to read. This definitely enhances the experience and makes you want to read for longer. Or you can even go to like your local library. Just being around books and being in that environment definitely gets me in the reading mood and inspired to read. But yeah, that is it for this video. I would love to know your reasons for why you love reading and any other tips you may have. Thank you so much once again to Casetify for sponsoring this video. Don't forget the new iPhone 14 Impact case series is out now on casetify.com, and you can go to casetify.com/bookswithchloe to get 15% off your order. If you're looking for more content from me, I'll have my Patreon linked below, my socials linked below, including my Twitch, which I mentioned before. I appreciate you all a lot. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.